I mean, there's a reason that that's on the cover because I mean that's there's no mistaking what's going to happen to you when you put this album on. It's right on the front. I mean, it tells you right there.
Welcome to Musing. Every once in a while, my brother George and I would have these conversations about music. Music is our passion, and it's a huge part of our lives, and we decided to share those conversations with you. So if you love music, sit back and enjoy this podcast.
Okay, welcome back to Musing. Got my brother on the line.
How we doing?
Good. This is today is a conversation we had quite a long time ago. And as the intro says, we love to share that stuff with you.
Yes. Whether you like it or not.
Exactly. No, you like it. Everybody likes it.
Whether you respond to it or not. How's that?
So this is something it's been akin to me since I've started listening to music. And I know that when we did have this conversation years ago, I don't think you actually felt the same way I feel about it.
Oh, no, it's polar opposite actually.
Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting conversation today. I don't think we argue on the point. I think it's just one of those things that.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think we ever really. Well, we have argued probably, but I think it's just an agree to disagree thing. And this isn't even a disagreement.
Yeah.
It's a preference thing. I think more than anything.
So for me, when a song comes on radio, my mix on my CD or my phone, my iPod, whatever I've got running, there will be times where I will actually literally turn down or turn off the song immediately because it is a song that I really don't want to listen to unless I can listen to the entire album that was put out or that the song was actually on. And I don't know.
That's an extremely difficult task.
It is.
If I like the song.
Especially, yeah. Most of the time it is a song that I like anyways. So it's an extremely difficult task for me to reach down and turn off the radio or, take my earphones out. Or especially if I'm working, if I'm listening to music while I'm working and that song pops on, I'm immediately going to be drawn away from whatever I'm doing anyways. But to turn it off you're right, it's kind of hard to do. But so I posed that to you at one point in time, and when we had the conversation about it, you were really like, no, I don't. That doesn't happen for me.
Well, I'm not. It's weird because I don't usually if I hear a song that I like, I don't ever turn it off. I usually turn it up or stop what I'm doing to make sure I appreciate it. So finding the time to turn something off and go back to it and listen to the whole album that encompasses was always difficult for me. I like those surprises, hearken it to radio, when you used to, maybe dating myself. I used to remember laying in bed at night with my fingers on the play record button on my cassette thing, waiting for that song to come on the radio, before I could afford to buy albums, before I even, was old enough to have money to buy albums or even know that there was a bunch of other songs by that band.
Yeah. No.
So it kind of, it harkens me to a time when you would wait, or you'd be on working or something and that song would come on the radio and you didn't have that option. I mean, my affinity for this predates Pandora or Spotify or YouTube or the ability to I'll just go listen to the whole album, or even, having hundreds of thousands of albums that, buying every single album that came out with the idea that I've got a list of, I struggle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 8 that I consider complete albums that I would listen to given the chance. Is how I kind of had to break this down, because I love variety if nothing else, and this was not a disrespect to having to stop and listen to the whole album as you've described it, but as more of a, that song is on a complete album for me. And if given the time and the opportunity, I would most certainly listen to the whole thing, is how I kind of had to break it down for me.
That's an interesting take on it because, we're obviously of the same era. We're not, our ages aren't that far apart. And, I did the same thing you did. We sat around, we waited for, a lot of times they'll announce, hey, in the next two songs, we're playing this song because it's hot right now. And, it gave us a little bit of an indicator of, hey, you hit the record button before the next song. And then you usually had to do that like 3 times before you got to the song you wanted. But I think it's also more, the digital age has certainly made this idea a lot easier for me.
Oh yeah, it's certainly a lot more accommodating, if nothing else.
Right, and I think there was a gap in that livelihood for me that I did this. Then I think I just got used to it. So when we were kids, you didn't have that option. When I didn't have a family and and responsibilities and job and stuff where I had to be somewhere every single day, that idea of stopping and picking up an album instead of listening to that one song was easy. I could take an hour, 15, hour, 30, 2 hours to just put an album on and go, man, this is work. This is a piece of work. This is something that they chose to do. So, in this time and age, it's hard for me to capture that amount of time to do that, but I still find myself, and when certain songs come on the radio, I will still reach down and turn it off and go, I'm gonna put that on later and I'm gonna listen to that entire album. And I think it also has to do with research for me, with thinking about, obviously there was some thought put into how an album was put together by both the band, the producer, the record company, labels. There was a reason they put song A after song B. There was a reason that they end, again, dating ourselves, they end side 1 with this album or with this song, and then side 2 starts with this song.
Right.
There is a reason that a song bleeds over into another, that there is, some semblance of a sound that carries from one song to another. And there's a reason they took that attitude. Right. So I want to be privy to that. Go ahead.
I think I might be slightly jaded as to buying numerous albums of one-hit wonders. I'm like, son of a, that sucks. This whole album sucks. That one song is great. This whole album, the rest of this album is trash. Well, right. I mean, and those of us in our time frame are going to happily cringe when I say, remember you could get 12 albums for 99 cents when you join the record club deal? Dude, I've got 4,000 CDs worth of trash with 6 or 8 complete albums.
Wow, I do too. I have an entire bin full of CDs down there.
What was that? Columbia? Oh,
Columbia House. There you go.
Columbia House? Yeah. Yeah, and they'd send you that list, and you're like, oh, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. And then you only have to buy 14 more albums at $71 a piece after that, after you get 12 albums free.
I do have to say I'm going to earmark this episode, spot on this episode too, because I think a future podcast is going to be albums we purchased for a single song that sucked. EMF was another one for me.
That should probably tie nicely into this one. That should be next week's.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to start off with one that's kind of new for me, and it's one that I know the musical taste in this area is not the same, and it's just an album that I started listening to this type of music to give it a chance, and I really fell in love with a couple of the bands that come out of this. I don't even know what genre they call it. It's kind of, I know it's emo rock. I know it's, alternative, but the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance is an album that
Yeah, screamo or emo.
Yeah, and I picked the album up because I really fell in love with the Welcome to the Black Parade song, and did a little research on the album itself, and then kind of fell into the album and started listening to it. And every time one of the songs come on, they only play one or two songs really off of it, anyways, and rarely at all, and on the radio anymore. But it's just. It is a story album. It's one of the concept albums. We've already got a podcast earmarked for that as well at some point in time to talk about story albums. But it's very flowing. It's very, one song leads into the next, and tells a story of a child who is growing up and has problems throughout his life and comes to the end of his life. And I won't spoil it for you if you guys want to listen to the whole album, but a lot of influence from bigger name bands, like Ziggy Stardust, or bigger name albums like Ziggy Stardust and The Wall from Pink Floyd, which I'll actually mention a little bit in a minute too. But the album is, like I said, it starts off exactly at the beginning of. I don't know. It's weird how the song starts off. It kind of starts off with giving you a precursor of what's going on in later on in their life, and then kind of builds through the life of this person that they're talking about, and through song. And like I said, Welcome to the Black Parade is a good song, anyways. But to know where it fits into this entire album makes it hard for me to listen to it and not go, man, I want to hear where this starts. I want to hear where this goes. I want to hear where it ends. So,
and see that I've never been a fan, so I mean, to go back and I'll actually have, listen to the whole album to see if it changes my mind.
Yeah.
I never really cared for the song when it came out. I'm not, that's, you prefaced with that this is not, not my wheelhouse, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't dislike it. There's a lot of talent in those bands. Those, and I say kids. I mean, when that stuff was coming out, I mean, they were mostly kids, young kids, just. And I think it was like almost emotionally draining to listen to it, because it was that goth meets anger. It's like the dark zombie kids, and then all of a sudden they were really pissed off and making angry music, and I didn't get it, but I don't dislike it. It's just not my bag. So I mean, I'll definitely have to go back and give that a spin.
Yeah, that was actually released in 2006.
Really?
Yeah,
that's not that long ago, I guess.
No. And interestingly enough, the lead singer would have been 31 when it was released.
Oh, wow.
Weird. I would have thought much younger. Anyways.
Yeah, no, because that's, I think, like some 41 type of, like 18-year-old, 19-year-olds screaming and jumping and kind of mixing punk and goth and, I don't know, type of. But again, I shied away from that, so I'll have to revisit it. And that's what most of this is for, is just a foothold, just enlighten somebody, change somebody's mind, maybe not, but.
Yeah, I mean, the band started in 2001, but 2006, so that was mid-20s when they started, anyways. But so yeah, that's one that's right at the top of my list that I've got again. We're all still talking about personal preference, but as soon as one of those songs comes on, even in my mix, if one of the other odd songs comes on, I'll stop it. I'll go back and listen to it and get through as much as I can. So
I don't know that there's like a level of these are in. I'm gonna every album that I'm gonna say is in like no particular order. Okay. Because I don't like have like one that, and then like I'm not starting at the bottom or starting at the top.
Yeah, same here.
These are just albums that when I hear songs off of, I think of, if not listen to a lot of them, I do think that, man, that was a great album, and what I started with. You know, if I can't or don't listen to the whole thing, I most certainly appreciate if I hear a song off of any of these albums, I most certainly think, man, that's just a great album. Complete, total front to back. I could, if I had the time, or if I got to it. I would say, but I'm going to start with Deliverance by Corrosion of Conformity.
Oh man, that might have actually made it on my list now that I think about it.
Just fantastic. Meat and potatoes, dark, heavy rock and roll metal, if you will. I mean, there's some, but it was different than most of the albums out at that time. Corrosion of Conformity I don't think people got them. I mean, some did. I know you and I did. But I think it missed a lot of people because it wasn't asymmetrical metal. It pushed a lot of boundaries, I think, and it wasn't exactly I don't know how to put it. It wasn't exactly straight up, you know, it wasn't an AC/DC's Highway to Hell album. I mean, it was just different, and that's what I loved about it. It seemed like every song, the next song was a little bit different and a little bit stranger, a little bit heavier, a little bit lighter, or a 7-minute instrumental. It was just really impressive. And anytime I hear any song, and of course, I mean, Clean My Wounds and Albatross, there's some really amazing songs on that album, but the rest of the songs on the album, I think, carry those well beyond just listening to one song. If I pick an album that's like I haven't heard for a while, or if I hear one of those songs, it's like, wow, yeah, and that makes me want to go back and listen to the whole album, because the whole album is fantastic to me.
Yeah, and I think that's, definitely not going to argue with you on that album. I would say that that's probably a little less in the area of what I'm talking about for me today, but still, if I get the chance, I will put that album on. It does carry over into each other. There's a lot of, is there one or two, maybe even three instrumental songs on there?
Was it Senor Limpio or?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it's a lot of mood. It's a lot of setup for songs that's in there that I really dig on that. Yeah, I can definitely go with that one. And I don't. And you're right, it is kind of obscure. It's not something that you're either into them or you're not. I kind of feel about them the same way I feel about Clutch. You're either into them or you're not, like totally. Yeah. So true.
That's true.
But that's kind of the way I feel about an album that of a band that nobody's ever heard of. It actually appeared on one of our podcasts of nobody's ever heard of these bands, but they're cool. Imperial Drag is a band I've been listening to since I picked up the album, and another one that I'm only going to hear it on my mix. Very, very rarely will you ever hear a song off of this album on the radio. Occasionally when they have like those flashback days, you'll hear Boy or Girl or Zodiac Sign. But it's just another band that, if it comes up on my iPod, I stop. I will actually go to it at that point and just go start playing it, because it's just an album that attracts me. That, again, it's not really a story. Each song is kind of a self-contained story. They were story writers. They took a lot of cues from the folk type writing with words and stuff. So I really enjoy the album for that reason. So just another one on my list, but nothing big. It's just a band that I really am attracted to and love their entire album. So
there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, I think that's. And I mean, I maybe I misinterpreted the assignment a little bit, but I think that's mostly the way I went with mine. I mean, I went with album flow, and if I want to listen to the entire album, I guess was as best I could come up with. As far as production and how they flow and stuff like that, I know you and I have always differed a little bit like that. I kind of go by feel a lot.
Yeah.
If I like it, I'm listening to it. You know what I mean? If it wears out, or if it holds up, if it holds water, you know, I'll put it back on. So, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No, I think that's kind of in the same vein of what I'm talking about. I just take it to more extreme than you do.
Right, and that's exactly what I meant. You're more polished, and I'm more just seat of the pants on some of this stuff. And
well, I will say that the next two albums I'm going to talk about, one of them you might agree with, and the other one I think you're going to find shocking. So I'm gonna tie them together.
all right.
And Justice for All is
That's
an
on
album
my list.
that I knew we would agree on, and period. But
Yeah.
you know, it even got mentioned in our one. I think it was on your top 25.
Yeah. One. Yeah.
I can't think of a more a whole album of my listening career as a musician than this album. And even the popular songs that they play with, you know, playing One off of it, when that comes on the radio, I will still turn off One to let that fit between Eye of the Beholder and The Shortest Straw. I will make sure that I can lead into that, you know, ending Eye of the Beholder and diving into One.
We should probably switch this to like a YouTube channel, because like I have goosebumps talking about it, because when like Frayed Ends of Sanity comes on, I want to break stuff, because it really, when you listen to that album, you hear the pain of losing Cliff Burton.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
From beginning to end, you feel how pissed off they are that they lost Cliff Burton.
Yeah.
That song it's almost painful. That album is almost painful to listen to, because they are so mad. That's one of the heaviest, and I mean emotionally as much as musically, albums to listen to beginning to end. And Justice for All it's almost haunting, because they wanted it to be, you know, I mean, when you listened to Frayed Ends of Sanity, I mean, they're going crazy missing him. I mean, that's epic. That's an epic album.
And I think I also appreciate it because it does two things. It fills the gap, obviously, when they lost Cliff.
Yeah.
But it was also a huge leap from you know, if you look at Master Puppets was right before it.
I thought Ride.
No, it was Ride the Lightning was before Master Puppets. Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, and Justice for All. Gotcha. 84, 86, and 88. But if you look at Master Puppets right before it, and if you look at the Black Album right after it, let's
not look at the Black Album. Right?
Yeah, right. Well,
no, go ahead. Sorry.
Only for this reference. But if you look at the bookends around this album, this isn't a Metallica album. This is a tribute album, like you said. And unheard of at the time. I mean, you're talking, rock was making a transition to metal, which was making a transition to hair metal, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And when you look at the times of songs on this album, 9:47, 7:44, 9:49. People didn't make albums like this at that time. It was 4 on the floor, 2.5, 3-minute songs.
But I think Metallica they took that extra time to emphasize. I mean, it was so melodic. I mean, when you listen to Dyer's Eve, it's like, wow, you know, and then it just, I don't know.
There is no song on this album less than 5 minutes. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and there's no song on that album that needed to be less than 5 minutes.
No, And I think that's why this album might have been that tipping point in my life that this whole idea started.
You know what? That
Good.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I think you're right. I mean, for me, that epitomizes wanting to listen to an entire album.
Right. Exactly. But then I'll lead that into something that I don't think you know this one, and it's a song. It's funny because one of my buddies, Mike Simmons, kind of commented on my top 25 and why I didn't put this song off of this album as my choice for this band. And so the years ago, I owned a box set of AC/DC albums. And in that box set of AC/DC albums had the original Australian printing of most of the what we know as albums in the United States.
Right.
And there was an Australian printing of the album Let There Be Rock. And when I put that on and listened to it, I immediately fell in love with the album front to back. And there's some obscure stuff on it, but it also has Let There Be Rock and a whole lot of Rosie on it.
It's got my vote.
Don't tell anybody, but there are times when I will turn off Let There Be Rock.
Okay, I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
at points and go back to the album, the Australian version. I actually found a CD of it later on, and listened to that album. And there's even there's a song on the Australian version that was actually replaced on the international version, with Problem Child, which I'm not a big fan of that song anyways. But there's a song on there that it's a joke song. It's called Crab City in Blue, and it's talking about him having crabs. Yeah.
All right. No, I have heard that song. Yeah.
But it still fits on that album. And there's even songs like where they're like recording before they're recording. Like there's like some almost false startups of songs where they started playing it and then they kind of stop, and you can hear like the ambient talking and the guitar kind of,
See, I love the studio recordings. I love when they leave that stuff in.
And this album, there's not a bad song on this album for me. And I will literally, I have actually stopped Let There Be Rock on my mix and went and turned
You said that
one.
twice now. I mean, if you say it again, we're not even going to be friends, because I don't even know if that's possible. Because that was number one on my top 25 of all time list. So that you're pushing up, you're walking thin ice, bro.
But and it's interesting too, because that song actually is third on the list of songs on that album. And while I appreciate where it is, I actually also appreciate that Whole Lot of Rosie is the last song on the album, and that I can go and kind of feel this.
Certainly not least, because I literally went between those two songs for my number one of all time. So.
Yeah, so I figured that might shock you that the album itself is something that there's songs on there that people have never heard of before.
It shocks me that you would turn off Let There Be Rock, but the entire album, that doesn't shock me. No.
But like the Dog Eat Dog is on there, and you rarely ever hear it. But it's one of those songs that it fits right there, just right up against Let There Be Rock. I mean, I hear that song, and I'm like, ooh, I know what's coming next.
Yeah, now see, that would turn off and listen to the whole album, but not necessarily Let There Be Rock. So
I figured I'd just throw those kind of two, bookend them together, and show you, the range. What else you got on your list?
I've got a few other ones. I'm gonna say one and walk past it because it's a gimme. Boston's self-titled album.
What? Shocker.
Boston. Yeah, I know, right? I'm not gonna get too far into that, but by comparison, the production quality, the song quality, I mean, I think they've literally played every song off that album as a radio single. I mean, it would be hard pressed to say someone, if they played you could pick any song, any track, push play, and somebody's heard it. And I heard it on the radio. Of course, More Than a Feeling is on it. But rock and roll band, Smokin', pick one. I mean, they're just, that was in 77 or 8 when that came out. I mean, the corporate rock, the Bad Companies, the Foreigners, the Journeys, the REO Speedwagons were all in the same vein, and Tom Schultz's production quality and the titles and the tracks and the songs were just better than everybody else's. I think we even talked about best album or the perfect album. I think
Yeah.
what started all this whole crap years ago. But again, I'm not going to dwell on that. That's kind of a given for me. One that I'm going to really throw a wrench in your hole is Blow My Fuse by Kix.
That's not an album.
Yeah, it is.
No. I've never heard of it before. Don't know what you're talking about.
I
Really? Hold on.
Really,
I have to put that on the Spotify list now.
when I was buying albums, 12 albums for 99 cents, and then off the record, off Columbia House, I heard "Don't Close Your Eyes." It was like this huge hair metal ballad that always kind of stuck with me. It's about a buddy of his committing suicide or whatever.
Right.
And I listened to the song, and once I realized there was like one hair metal band had like some substance, and this is a more or less a guilty pleasure, but I just absolutely, it's fun hair metal with a tragic power ballad mixed in, which I think it was a recipe for most of those albums. But
Yeah.
every other song on that album I just enjoy. No Ring Around Rosie, Boomerang, She Dropped Me the Bomb. There's, it's just,
Wow.
to me it's a guilty pleasure thing, but I love every song on that album. And if I hear Don't Close Your Eyes, I'll listen to the whole album.
Really?
Because, yeah.
I was joking when I said that before. I when this album was big, it was big, and I listened to it as well. And looking at the list of songs, yeah, I actually remember listening to the album front to back as well. I obviously wouldn't feel the same way about this one as you do, but that is a shocker. I was kind of shocked to hear that, but man, 1988.
Yep.
Glam metal is what they titled it. I'm not sure why they would call it glam metal, but
one of their other, Cold Shower, wasn't on that album, but
yeah,
I
that
just
song's
really love that song.
well,
I just always kind of dug that band. As far as a lesser known hair metal band, they only put out, I don't know, 2 or 3 albums, and but I just always dug that album. And I literally still have the CD, and I'm sort of ashamed, but not really.
And as I say, you shouldn't be ashamed. Like I said, I don't think it's definitely not a stretch for this album to be something I could listen to, but it's not one I would stop. 1, 2, 3, 7 albums.
Really?
Yeah, they actually put one out in 2014. I'm not sure if you know that.
No, I most certainly didn't favor them that much.
Yeah.
To follow their career, obviously, but
Yeah.
That song or that album always stuck with me.
Blow My Fuse did actually go platinum, though, just FYI.
Well, that because of Don't Close Your Eyes, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was you couldn't turn the radio on in the late 80s without hearing that song.
Yeah, it was, yeah, exactly. And I think that's, I'm not saying that I wouldn't seek out and listen to the album itself, because I do remember listening to it now that I looked at kind of the titles and stuff, but it's certainly not when Blow My Fuse comes on, or Close My Eyes.
No,
Don't Close Your Eyes.
I don't ever turn the song off and wait to listen to the whole album, but I mean, if I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go back and listen,
Well, I hit 2. Give me another one of yours.
Sailing the Seas of Cheese by Primus.
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to do some work. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I know a couple songs off of it, but what's the attraction?
Um, I love Primus. Not secretly. I mean, I'm a
Well,
huge Primus fan. I
I'm
think Les
certainly.
Claypool is fantastic.
Yeah.
The music. I mean, the music itself is almost tongue in cheek, but obviously his bass playing is, you know, say what you want. You can him, Geddy Lee. There's a few people that, you know, that have taken that instrument to another level. He's taken it to another planet. Um, but the guitar player, the drummer, everybody in that band is. I mean, if you listen, yes, his bass work is first rate, but just keeping up with him and the off time beats and the rhythms that they use, and the guitar is almost the rhythm section and the bass almost the lead. I always dug that perception. They've had a lot of, you know, I'd hate to say radio hits. They've had a lot of fame based on Les Claypool. And he's got, 100 side projects,
Right.
Sausage and, anyway.
Very Maynard-esque.
Yes. He does a lot of work with a lot of bands. But when I heard Jerry was a race car driver, I thought, wow, that is super cool. But then, that album is one I can listen to beginning to end and not even feel bad. I mean, like the Fisherman Chronicles and Tommy the Cat. There's just, again, there's no, I wouldn't even begin to say there's flow to it. It's just every song is just like, is better than the last one. It just keeps getting better, and it still holds, to me, it still holds up as unique, if nothing else. And I say unique among Primus albums. It always, Sailing the Seas of Cheese was always, to me, it was just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I just enjoy listening to the whole album. If I get the chance, I do listen. Most of the songs on there are believable and fun, if nothing else. And
I would say that the Primus probably puts together albums like that. They're more, I don't know, artist creations, kind of. I mean,
yeah, oh yeah.
And I would say that for me, and Justice for All kind of fits in this idea. And,
sure.
I mentioned Maynard from Tool, Perfect Circle / add 6 bands to the end of it.
Right.
And it's side thought, I'm shocked that those two haven't worked together before. That Claypool and Maynard haven't worked together before. That seemed like they would have the same idea about an album as a
but I think
piece.
I don't think Les Claypool takes himself nearly as seriously as Maynard does.
Good point. Very good point.
I think they're polar opposites is the only reason why. Talent-wise and conception-wise, absolutely.
Yeah.
Personalities, I would say probably, I mean...
Yeah, you're probably right. No, that's a good insight.
Because I'm going to give you 2 songs, one from each of them, to explain what I'm talking about. And it's Wynona's Big Brown Beaver and Hooker with a Penis. And that's point. Exactly, there's no other way I could explain the difference between Primus or Les Claypool and Tool and or Maynard Keenan than those 2 songs.
No, okay. Settled. We're good here. We can move on. I'm going to put one out that is almost an automatic for me, and probably is for a lot of people too, because I think honestly, listening to any of the individual songs off this album are almost painful, because most of them were meant to fit with the song or 2 songs before it or 2 songs after it. and it's The Wall by Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
And I, while I appreciate the songs that they play on the radio, Another Brick in the Wall, what's another? It's Comfortably Numb's on there.
Comfortably Numb.
Yeah. Even Empty
Mother.
Spaces gets, Mother. When I hear those songs on the radio, it is an automatic for me. It's flip it off because I'm going to sit down and either listen to the album or watch the movie and go through it. And this one requires a lot of time.
Indeed.
You can't just sit down and spend an hour with this. Well, I guess you could. I mean, it's 20 minutes on each album by 4. So,
Man, this is tough because, and we may get some hate mail. The Wall is my least favorite Pink Floyd album.
No, and I don't think you're in bad company with that. I think that people find it.
No, I mean you either.
Gaudy.
I don't think you either love it or hate it, but it's a concept album. It is.
It is.
It was more built for the movie than the than the production and the tour than necessarily an album. The music is great. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan. But that album, I think, pales in comparison to a lot of their other works.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It is certainly not an album that, that the hits that are produced off of it are hits that can stand alone most of the time. How do you play Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 on the radio though? Because it starts like with the ending of the song before it, or Part 1, one of the two. One of them's got almost the lead in from the song before it. But I will agree with you that it's very gaudy. It's very in your face. This is not a rock album. This is an opera. This is a storytelling.
Absolutely.
It's a train of storytelling. You're not going to stop it. Yeah, it's a musical. That's a good way of putting it. No, it is. I know. But it's still that feeling that, and I appreciate this album quite a bit. But
no disrespect to it. I think it's an amazing work.
And that's why I think this album is so strong for me in that feeling. And again, I mentioned Injustice being kind of the catalyst for that idea in my head that I need to stop and listen to an album. But I think this is the peak of that for me. The peak of that idea for me is that Mother comes on or Empty Spaces comes on the radio and I immediately turn it off. I mean, occasionally, well, I'm almost Comfortably Numb's almost an overplayed song for me on the radio at this point, but
most of that album, I think that's why to me, I mean, because Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, Comfortably Numb,
Run Like Hell is one that,
Run Like Hell is I mean, in my area, is rarely played.
Right. Same here. But when it does, even though it's rarely played, I will turn it off and I will switch over to the album and just start listening to it.
Yeah. Side note. Yeah. Canadian all-female heavy metal band Kitty did a cover of Run Like Hell, which you should listen to.
See, now I got to put that on the Spotify list too.
I know we're not doing covers, but I always think of that when I hear that.
We need to go back to that one anyways. There's been a couple new things have come out since we had that discussion anyways. So
their version's pretty awesome.
I'll check it out. I'll put it on.
If you're into that kind of thing.
I'll put it on Spotify. So I only have one more on my list, but I want to see what else you got on yours.
I got 1, 2, 3. I got 3 left.
You want to hit them fast?
I can. Because they're me in a nutshell. Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power got me through high school and several years preceding or after that, I guess. And
I don't you have to. I mean, you have to by law stop that halfway through, or you have an aneurysm, right? I mean, you can't.
No, I mean that. Yeah. Well, I was gonna go with Far Beyond Driven, but that one you do need.
Yeah, you do.
Like you need to time out. You do need to take a breath around hard lines.
Grab a bottle of water and kind of cool down.
Right. But Vulgar Display of Power, to me was why I like heavy metal music, is why I like metal, is why I like hard. That is the one album I remember, like, I heard This Love. I heard it on the radio, and immediately went out and bought the CD. And not disappointed, even a little bit.
Yeah.
And when I realized, because I was listening to like Anthrax, which was heavy and fast and almost campy compared to Pantera.
Yeah.
Pantera was pissed off.
There's
about
a reason.
Something. I didn't know what.
There's a reason that the cover of one of their albums has somebody being punched in the face.
It's that album. Yes, that's why. That
yeah,
album.
I mean, there's a reason that's on the cover, because I mean, that's, you know, there's no mistaking what's going to happen to you when you put this album on. It's right on the front. I mean, it tells you right there.
100%. But songs, a new level of confidence and power. I mean, when I started listening to what he was saying, is when I started realizing the lyrics mattered. The music, forcing those lyrics out mattered, and those lyrics pushed by that music mattered to me at that time in my life. And teenage angst, and the world sucks and everybody sucks and I hate everybody. It spoke to me on a different plane. It was different, because I loved at the time. My buddy had turned me on to Anthrax in the late 80s. 87, 88, I started listening to Among the Living, and I loved it. I loved that fast speed, that thrash metal. Some of it was fast, but some of it was slowed down, but it was angrier, it was heavier, it was harder, it was almost, like you say, almost scary. It was a punch in the face to what I was used to.
Yeah.
And I liked it and wanted more of it. And Pantera has always been a huge go-to. Like if you're feeling that, and to me, I mean, it might not work for everybody else. Some people, it amps them up, but to me, it's like listening to somebody else. It's like, man, that guy's got a lot worse than I do. I really need to calm down. I'll just let Phil take that, because that dude's pissed off seriously bad about something.
All the time, like. You come in. There's not a ballad on that. I mean, even when it's a ballad, it's not.
Yeah, This Love is that's close as you kind of get, and that's why I kind of. But then when I, of course, there are songs on that album that, I mean, they'll get you right there where you need to be. If you need to be amped up, you can. That album gets me right there, and I can scroll through that whole song or the whole album and not skip a song and never be disappointed. And that album still holds water today, with comparison to any metal band that's out or been out. To me, it's a complete album. It really is. And in an era of, I mean, that came out in 91, I think, 91 or 92. That was very different. I mean, even from the Metallicas and Slayer, because I mean, the Black Album was out, and right around that time frame, and even Slayer's albums in the early 90s pale in comparison to Pantera's. I mean, they obviously the guitar work, but Phil's voice and just complete package to me, and I always loved that album. Most of their albums, but I always loved that album, front to back. A different spin is Core by Stone Temple Pilots. We've talked about in previous episodes.
That's a good album front to back though too.
That's my Desert Island album. If I have to take one with only one album with me, that's the one I'm taking. To me, there's not a more complete, if you want to call them grunge, okay, or rock or metal or both or all three, all of the above, whatever. To me, that there's not a bad song on that album. It really showcased the DeLeo brothers and Weiland's talent. And that whole, it was just a brilliant album. It's still one of the best albums ever written to me, and production wise and stuff like that. That always blew me. That album always blew me. It blew me away from the first time I heard it. I heard Sex Type Thing for the first time, and I'm like, whatever that is, I want to listen to all of that.
Exactly.
And it just got better. It was so melodic and so different, and almost songs that almost didn't even seem like they were from the same band or should even be on the same album.
Agreed 100%, because that album was it was so diverse, but it had that same thread running through the entire thing.
Yeah,
this kept everything
powerful,
together.
Very powerful and very, very just good, for lack of a better word.
Well, my last one's no surprise either. I'm Appetite for Destruction is one of those albums that I can just listen to front to back, and I don't find myself turning off the songs as often as I used to, because I've really, I don't know if I've maybe burned myself out on it, but I will still go back and listen to from start to finish of that. And as a side note, I will say that there's very few albums out there that I feel, we talked early in this podcast about piecing songs and putting them, specific songs, next to each other for a reason.
Right.
With The Wall, they obviously had to do it for a reason, because they were telling really a kind of a story front to back.
Yeah.
Starting the Appetite for Destruction album with Welcome to the Jungle it probably sold it for me. I mean, that's probably what made it such an influential album on me anyways. Sure. If that song was anywhere else on the album, or if another song had started this album off, I probably wouldn't have been so attracted to it. But again, it's a gimme for me. It's one of those albums that I love every song on it. So listening to one song, if Rocket Queen comes on the radio, I'll probably turn it off. If Paradise City comes on, I probably won't. But it is definitely an album that at points I will turn it off and go listen to the whole album front to back. But I'm a sadist like that. So,
I had one more. The last one on my list is License to Ill by the Beastie Boys.
Oh, dude, the problem with that is I couldn't figure out which one I would do, that or Paul's Boutique.
See, actually, I had to check your head first, but I think License to Ill is. I'm sorry, if any of those, if you can't listen to that entire album, you don't have a soul. That's all there is to it.
And I'll agree with you, but for that one, the songs are so different that they can. That's an album that they can stand alone for me. Like if Girls comes on, it's on. Whatever, we're going through it. I don't have to stop and go back and listen to the album, because it's a different feel of them.
See, I think it's a showcase of how talented those idiots were.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that I can respect you feeling that way about that album. It's just one of those ones that I wouldn't, like, I think I would feel the same way I do about the albums that I've talked about today with Paul's Boutique. If one comes on, that's one I want to listen to front to back. But License to Ill is just one of those ones I could, it comes on the radio. I'm not even going to turn it off. It's going to be, hey,
turn it up.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a small parting shot, and I'm going to force you into a decision, because one of the albums that I'm going to list has this feeling for me. I will stop some of the songs on this album and I will go back and listen to it. And this is also one that I really kind of have to have silence and be away from everybody to listen to, because the nuances of the music are big for me. But I know you're not a huge fan of the band, but I'm going to ask you, parting shot, 1, 2, 3, or 4 Led Zeppelin albums. If you're made to sit down and listen to one, I mean, I can give you some help if you need, help on what's on what.
No, Led Zeppelin 2.
Everybody goes there, and I'm not faulting you for it.
Only because I'm a casual listener.
Right, exactly. And it's not, it's the go-to for a lot of people. I mean, you've got camps of people that do 2, and you got camps of people that do 4.
Right.
4 is going to be an obvious one. Well, Untitled, whatever they call it, but it was 4 because it has Stairway to Heaven on it. I mean,
And see, I mean, for how I am about Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven is I think is their not. I am not. I have never been impressed with Stairway to. And I think that's why I've never been a huge Led Zeppelin fan, is because I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't argue. If people like music, I don't fault them for it.
Right.
I do not get Stairway to Heaven, and I unapologetically, they've got a lot of great songs.
Yes.
Stairway to Heaven doesn't work for me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only guy on the planet that doesn't get it.
No,
but go ahead.
They're a love-hate band. I mean, even within albums, like I honestly, there's maybe one song on Led Zeppelin 3 that I will listen to. The rest of it is just chaff for me. If it comes on, whatever. If it's not, whatever. 2 is obviously everyone's go-to for a reason. It has a lot of their bigger hits on it.
Sure.
I think what sells mine, which is number 1 for me, Led Zeppelin 1 is an album that I will literally turn off most of the songs when they come on and just go put it on. It's not a really long album anyways, and I can give or take the last song on the album, so it's 8 minutes long. I can kind of pass that one up regardless. But Led Zeppelin 1 for me is that Good Times Bad Times comes on the radio, I turn it off. Communication Breakdown comes on the radio, I most likely will turn it off. It's a short song, so maybe I don't have to, but I can listen to that album front to back and just be lost in the melding of blues and rock and where it was turning rock into. So I was just kind of curious which one stood out.
No, I've weakened my stance of anti-Led Zeppelin over the years. There's no denying the influence. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sorry. They're a great band. They were a great band.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was Stairway to Heaven, because lyrically, yes, and musically it's arranged well. I don't like the song.
Yeah, no,
I don't know how. I don't know how. It's one of those things. It's one of them inexplicable deals. I don't know why. I just don't. And I've listened to it obviously hundreds of times over the years, and it's like Freebird to me.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I just don't understand the appeal.
Well,
because Leonard Skinner's got some great songs too. Why Freebird? That's not your best work. I don't get it. That's how I always felt. And I think that's why I always kind of turned a deaf ear to Led Zeppelin. I like a lot of their songs, and once I started listening to them and appreciating them more, it hasn't changed me like, Led Zeppelin's the best band ever, type of feeling. There's no denying their influence on the quality and the quantity and the depth of rock and roll, and the ideas, the production, the trial, the things that they use, the different instruments, the different thought process, the different ways of expressing what they thought or what they deemed music.
Mm-hmm.
Is influential, probably second to maybe Elvis, as far as changing the scene or changing the idea of what it could sound like.
Especially live music.
Oh, well, yeah, no doubt. And obviously, we've talked about this briefly too. Something like that, when you've got people, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Bonham, they're Olympian athletes at their craft to begin with, and when you put them together, that has very rarely happened.
Yeah. Well, and as a band, not as a supergroup, but as a band, yeah, that's
right. Just 4 guys coming together as a band, it hasn't happened a lot.
right.
There's been, we'll use Primus. Yes, Les Claypool is amazing. The guitar player's okay, good, and the drummer's good, but I mean, they didn't.
Blues Traveler.
There you go. Pick somebody that can play the harmonica better.
Or he sings pretty good. I mean, his voice is...
Sure, John,
yeah.
But the rest of the band just carried him.
Yeah. Hootie and the Blowfish.
Let's not do that. Let's try to stay focused.
Stay focused. I know, I'm veering. It's late. We're in an hour already, so it's late.
I know, but I mean, it's very... I would pick Led Zeppelin too, because if I had to listen to a Led Zeppelin album, because of my casual nature of being a fan.
So here's my problem with 2, and I will boil it down to this, and we'll kind of tie everything up. I can't listen to Heartbreaker without fast forwarding past the next song, and on the radio you can't do that. You have to, if you want to listen to Heartbreaker, you have to listen to Living, Loving, Maid.
Yeah.
Have to. I don't know what law they wrote into their contract when they released that song to the world. It's like We Are the Champions, and
hey, I'm just going to say, I will listen to We Will Rock You and turn the radio off as soon as We Are the Champions comes on.
Seriously though, two is a great album. I'm not going to deny it, but 1 has still just held more of my what my idea for this was.
Yeah, again, if forcing me to decide is, I don't know if it's a parting shot or not. I can listen to them. It's not something that I would pick to listen to, the whole album and think of how amazing it is. I do appreciate them more than I used to. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But
there's
a lot of great music being made.
Yeah, we'll tie it up. Like I said, I wanted to, hit that real quick because you're right, it's not really a parting shot, but I just want to kind of see, where you felt on those 4 albums. I think maybe we'll have to just do a whole podcast on those 4 albums at some point. Maybe with somebody else.
You'll have to have a guest.
Exactly. Well,
I'll just
Pete Pardo back on and let him
interject periodically then.
But anyways, a good conversation again today, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll probably catch up to you next week, and we can throw another title out there.
All right. 10-4.
Have a good one.
See you, man.
See ya.
We want to talk to you about music, so reach out to us at musicmusingfeedback@gmail.com.
You can also find us on most social media sites by searching Music Musing or George or Craig Seibert, Sybert.
And you can also find us on Twitter as musicmusing_ as well.
Thank you for listening to this Music Musing podcast.